We're in trances, going all to different places, different planets. Watch your aura pass me by, losing balance. What if we run out of time and second chances? Empty-handed, you love fast life.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Let's Talk with Sandra once again. Today, I have the honor and privilege of speaking with Mrs. Barbara Bolling-Williams. Mrs. Barbara Bolling-Williams is an attorney at law. She's the state president of the NAACP Indiana section. She is a member of the National Board of Directors for the NAACP. And last but not least, she is a child of God. Barbara, thank you so much for doing this interview with me. As you know, I am also an NAACP member. I'm aiming to get to your status.
Thank you so much, Sandra. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And you're right, we first met there in the West Lafayette, Kokomo area for our state convention. Yes. And you just were right at home, and it was your first convention.
Yes, it was.
But you got involved, you were engaged, and you were such a joy to get to know.
Thank you so much. And I'm gonna, this show, I like to talk to my Gary residents. And I had heard about you being a part of the NAACP. But once I met you and found out that you were actually from Gary, that was amazing to me. If you can tell me a little about where were you born and when?
Okay. Born here in Gary, Indiana. January 14th.
Wow.
19-something. And actually what's interesting, as I was thinking about, what it is that you may want to talk with me about. Yes. And I started thinking as I was driving here that I feel like I'm more of a child of the entire city. Wow. Because we kind of section off, there were people who were born on the east side and yes. people who were born, in Midtown and people yes. who were on the west side, or you might be in Miller, you might be in Glen Park, you might yes. be in Terrytown, you might be in Glen Park, a Horseman area. So, yes. We got a lot of sections of Gary. And for me, I went to church at Trinity Baptist Church right on 19th and Virginia. So that's east side. Mm-hmm. But we lived on Washington, which is Midtown, mm-hmm. 25th and Washington, mm-hmm. initially. Mm-hmm. And then my family moved out west, Willow Street, which is west side area, so the far west side.
Yes. But you were born in which side?
I was actually, the hospital, at the time that would allow Black, accept Black patients yes. was Mercy Hospital, yes. which is now the police station.
Yes.
That it used to be the old Mercy Hospital. Mm-hmm. So Midtown area.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, then I went to Trinity. We went to Trinity, which is east side. But then for elementary school, mm-hmm. I went first to Garnett, which is right around First Baptist Church and right behind Roosevelt High School. Mm-hmm. But then it came time for me to go to middle school, where most people would have gone to Beckman. I went to Pulaski because my mother taught there.
Okay, your mother. So let's tell me about your parents. Were they originally from Gary?
No, my parents.
How did your parents end up in Gary?
They both are from Mississippi.
Really?
My father was from the Gulf Coast,
really?
Called a little city called Ocean Springs, which is directly across the bridge from Biloxi, Mississippi.
Yeah.
And my mother was from more central Mississippi, Laurel, Mississippi. Uh-huh. And but they didn't meet until they both went to school at Tennessee State University. Really? And that's where they met, not in Mississippi, but in Tennessee.
And do you know what year that would have been?
That would have been about 1950.
Wow.
Yeah, 1950.
And they met in college and university.
They met in college.
It's just so amazing to me how so important education was mm-hmm. to our Black ancestors back then, mm-hmm. And that's impressive. So how did they end up in Gary?
Well, but this kind of go back when we were talking about the education.
Yes.
My dad went to school on the GI Bill. His name was Samuel Bolling. Yeah. So he went to school on the GI Bill. That's how he got there. My mother went there on a track scholarship.
Really?
Because she ran track and she was real athletic. She actually tried out for the Olympics.
What was your mother's name?
Mary Hardaway Bowling. Mary Elizabeth Hardaway.
Mary Hardaway Bowling.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she actually placed third. In those years, they only took the first and the second place winners. Now they take first, second, and third.
Third,
yeah.
Wow. She would have been at the Olympics.
She would have been at the Olympics, yeah. So, but how they ended up getting to Gary is that my father, like a lot of people, moved here for jobs, looking for a
Yes.
job. He had a sister and a brother who lived in Gary,
Mm-hmm.
and actually, my aunt's husband was named Chief, and it was really an Indian chief, Chief Sam Dooley.
Really?
So he came up to find a job and kind of get them all settled in. And then my mother came. She was a teacher. After she graduated from Tennessee State, and she started teaching back in her hometown, Laurel, while my father was getting us settled.
Mm-hmm.
And then she moved up here to join him. And
Wow.
she actually had sisters who lived in Hammond, Indiana.
Really?
So it wasn't
Back
a big
then? Back then.
back then. She had sisters and cousins who lived in Hammond, Indiana.
Wow.
And so it wasn't a real move that would have taken her all the way from family,
Yes.
and it would have been just knowing my father, but she had family to also lean on as well.
Yes.
So that's how we ended up here.
And your father, what his occupation? What was his occupation once he moved to Gary?
He was a brick mason.
Really?
He was a brick mason. Later years, my parents divorced, but they had an amicable relationship throughout the
Yes.
entire time. And he actually, when my mother built our house on the west side of Gary,
Mhm.
he built a garage to it.
Really?
Yeah.
So for you, what was it like growing up in Gary? Like you said, your elementary school and your middle school.
Mhm.
Once again, what elementary school did you attend?
At that time, it was called Garnett.
Garnett.
And when you say Gary, Indiana, everybody always says Jackson 5.
Yes.
So actually, we were in the same elementary school at the same time.
Really?
I can remember, but didn't really know them because they were
Yes.
just getting started.
Mhm.
But I remember them having a assembly for us,
Yes.
and they performed during the assembly.
Really?
So yeah, so like I said,
What did y'all think? What did you think when you saw them perform? Being a kid, you just
it was like, so it was fine. It was fine. So Garnett for elementary
Garnett,
school,
mhm.
then Pulaski for middle school,
Pulaski for middle school,
and Westside High for high school.
Westside. And at that time, were the schools still segregated? It was
No,
they were
no. By the
mixed.
time they were mixed, but Gary was, and still is predominantly Black.
Mhm.
That I didn't even realize that I had gone to school with anybody white until I was looking through my my class book, my yearbook.
Really?
And I saw, and I'm looking at the picture. I said, "Oh, we did have white people at our school at that time."
Wow.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how did you once you graduated high school? What was your next move?
Next move was always going to be college. We
Yes.
knew we were going to college.
Mhm.
So it's just a matter of where you're going to go.
Mhm.
And
Let me cut you there. Did you have brothers and sisters as well?
I do.
Okay.
I did, and I do.
Do you have any pictures of your mom and dad?
I have pictures of my mom and dad. This is my dad,
Wow.
Samuel Bowling.
Mr. Samuel Bolling.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a picture of my mom. I took this other picture out of there. he was a close family friend of ours.
Yes, that's your mom. You look like your mom.
Only because you never met my aunt. Because everybody always says I look like my Aunt Flossie. That's her right there. That's one of my mother's sisters.
Oh, you do look like her as well. That's Aunt Flossie right there.
That's Aunt Flossie. Yeah.
Wow. And how many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had one sister with my mom and dad, and then my father had 3 children. So I have 2 more sisters and a brother.
Wow.
Yeah, Annette, Janice, Sammy Lewis, and Carolyn was my, I like the sister.
Your biological sister. So what college did you attend once you graduated?
I actually went to a school that at the time was called General Motors Institute.
General Motors Institute.
Mm-hmm.
Where was that located?
In Flint, Michigan.
Really?
It's actually now known as Kettering University.
Really?
Now, if you listen to my story, you'll notice that every school I ever went to changed names.
Yes.
I think they were afraid. It's like we don't ever want to be associated with that person. again. We don't want her to be able to say that she went here, so we're going to change the name of this institution.
They change the names.
Everyone.
Yes.
Everyone.
Isn't that something?
It is.
Wow. So, what did you study in? How did you end up in law? What made you decide to become an attorney?
Well, I guess I've always, or shall I say most of my life, wanted to be an attorney.
Yeah.
Only because I could only remember a story. I was talking with my grandmother, and I had a picture of her. Mm-hmm. This is her sitting in the wheelchair. Oh, this is a better picture of her. It's a close-up shot right here. That's my grandmother.
Oh. And what was her name?
Her name was Mary Stroud.
Mary Stroud.
Mm-hmm. Mary Walton Stroud. And so we were talking. I was a little girl. I mean, probably 6, 7 years, not even 7. I think probably about 5, 6 years old.
Yeah.
And I said, Grandma, when I grow up, I'm going to buy you a big house.
Really?
And she said, not wanting to burst my dream, she says, okay, well, that's nice. How are you going to do that? Oh. I said, well, I'm going to marry a rich man.
You did.
So she said, well, just in case that doesn't work out for you, honey. She didn't say it like that. Yes. But she's like, well, do you have a plan B on how you're going to do it? I said, I'm going to be a lawyer.
You did?
Yes. And it just stuck with me. It's like, you got to be something. And it just popped in. I just popped out. And unfortunately, I didn't marry the rich man. I didn't become rich. Never bought my grandmother the house. Yeah. But that's how it started.
That's how the seed got planted.
That's how the seed got planted.
Isn't that something?
Mm-hmm. And you don't burst children's dreams.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, you just nurture them.
So where did you get your law degree from?
Valparaiso University.
University.
Which is no longer in existence. Like I tell you.
Yeah.
I kid you not. Yeah.
I mean, like, it's the shit.
So Valparaiso is actually, I don't know if you've seen signs for Valparaiso.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's only about maybe 40 miles from here. Yeah. So I moved back here to go to law school. And totally, I'd say I was gone away from Gary for about 20 years.
Really?
And I moved back permanently, yeah.
Where were you at when you left Gary?
Well, of course, Flint, that's where I started. And I was in Michigan for like 7 years.
Okay, because you were going to school.
Because I was going to school and then working after I finished school. Then I moved out to Philly for a real brief period.
Wow.
And then I I was in Cleveland for 2 years. Moved back to go to law school in Valpo.
Yes.
And out of law school, I did a clerkship in Fort Wayne, Indiana, with the U.S. magistrate there. Really? For 2 years. And finally, I moved back home.
You moved back home. H-O-M-E.
Mm-hmm. No place like it.
Growing up for you, what was it like in Gary when you were growing up in Gary? What can you remember?
Gary was a wonderful place, an exciting place. There was always so much to do. There so much culture. We met all kinds of people. I can remember going to the library to see Nikki Giovanni.
Really?
And I did, I don't know why she just still sticks out in my head, but I know that there were probably so many more. Yes. There were places that we went. The library was like one of the key places to go and be. Churches offered a lot of opportunity for young folks. We had skating, we had bowling, we had all kinds of school clubs. And I think that's what's missing with our young people today. They have nothing to do. Nothing to do. And it's so sad. But yeah, it was just an amazing place to grow up. We went on field trips certainly to Chicago, but we also went to DC. I can remember as a little kid going to DC, to the national capital, yes. and touring. And then we went back there, New York and DC, when I was like a sophomore in high school. Yeah. So there were just so many activities.
And I don't think I've even heard of any schools doing any trips since I've been here, or hear anyone saying that they've done any trips, school tours, school trips, and that even for me, growing up in Europe, that was a big thing.
It was a big thing.
It got you outside of your city, outside of your norm. And you were able to see something different.
And it let you know that the possibilities were endless as to what you could go. Because, somebody took you there and showed you this, and opened your eyes. And then you can say to yourself, I want to go back there one day. Yes. Or go someplace else. Or let me see another place, what they have to offer.
So, I know Mr. Bolling-Williams. So you were married, are married. Do you have kids of your own?
My own.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Sharon Reed,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a barber. And you can see
him here.
Oh, thank you.
And he's handsome.
Yeah,
that is definitely your baby.
So he lives in Indianapolis.
He's in Indianapolis.
So, and then my husband has 4 kids.
Okay.
So she's the baby girl. Oh, she's the only girl. And her name is
Desi. You know
Desi.
what's ironic? She looks like you.
And I want you to know that Santa is my husband.
Really? He's a good.
He bought that Santa suit when she was a little girl.
Really? He still wears it.
Hey, we got grandkids, okay? We got grandkids, so yes.
So how many grandkids do you currently have?
Oh gosh, we have 5 now.
Really?
Yeah, he had 4, and my son just had 1.
Congratulations!
She's about 2 months old.
Yeah.
Jay Charlotte. And the other ones are Ariana, Justice, Nyla, and Makai. And Makai's in Arizona. Everybody else is relatively local. We can play with them and visit them and have fun with them. So yeah, they're 11, 9, 7, 5, and now so much. Yeah.
And you know what? I remember when we were at our convention that we were talking about the history of Gary, not just like the Jackson 5, because that's all I knew. Growing up, I just knew Gary. I knew that the Jackson 5s were from Gary, Indiana, and that's what I knew. What do you know?
Well, if you want to talk about people who have made it on the national scene, then of course you got to think about Fred Williamson. Yeah. He was a football player. And an actor. Wow. He was from Gary? Google Fred Williamson. I never knew he was from Gary. Yeah. Fred Williamson. Then you have Denise Williams.
Denise Williams was from Gary, Indiana?
If it don't fit, don't force it.
I know that. I love Denise Williams. Oh, wow.
Then you had Kelly Patterson. That might have been a Kelly song. And Denise might have been another one. But anyway, you have Kelly Patterson, who was the first Black Miss Indiana.
Really?
Yeah. And then Kelly had a singing career as well. You might want to Google Kelly Patterson. Kelly Patterson.
Kelly Patterson.
Then you have, who else am I thinking about? Glenn Robinson. He played pro basketball.
Yes.
Whew. Okay, who else?
And I guess Bethune. Is that her name? Am I saying it right? The lady that was responsible for the Martin.
Oh, you're talking about Katie Hall. Absolutely. Yes. Katie Hall, who was a congresswoman from Gary, and and it had been introduced every year in Congress for 20 years. Wow. And then the one year the first year that Katie went to Congress, she introduced her bill. Yes. Congressman Conyers introduced his bill that he had been doing for 20 years.
Yes.
But hers is the one that passed.
The Martha Luther
King
Judah Holiday
bill. Katie Hall.
That's huge. That is absolutely huge. Hall. And you know what I just remembered?
What?
The Denise Williams song, "And I Just Gotta Be Free."
Yeah.
And I just gotta be free. And I never knew she was from Indiana.
Yeah, we have a lot of people.
Why is it seemed as though such a big deal was made, I guess, about the Jackson 5 and they're being from Indiana and such a history of it, and not people like Denise Williams and others who also were from Gary, Indiana, you know?
Well, I think that the Jackson 5, Michael Jackson, they had such an international stage.
They kind of put Gary on the map.
Plus, in their songs, I'm going back to Indiana.
That's right.
So they put it in their songs.
Yes.
And then they even say, and a shout out for Roosevelt High,
Really? Yeah. I gotta re-listen to that.
So, so that right in and of itself, lets everybody know where they're from.
Yes. Okay. Now when I listen to that song again, I'll know where Roosevelt High is. Isn't that something?
Yep, right there on 25th and Harrison.
Wow. So, who's some people that's personal in your life that went to school with you and graduated with you that are now doing great things for Gary or in all this, state?
Yeah, what comes to mind is as we're getting ready to celebrate this milestone graduation. Our graduation was 50 years old. I think about some of my classmates who have just done so well for themselves and have represented our community well, even if you may not know that they're from there. One, an author, Ebony Snow. She writes under the pen name Ebony Snow.
Really?
Then comes to mind the niece, Darlene Jackson.
Yes.
Darlene is a costume designer. Well, she's a designer. Mm-hmm. And if you remember the special, the Eddie Murphy special where he wore that red suit, red leather suit. Yeah. Darlene designed that. Really? Yes, she did. Yeah. And recently, I cannot think of her name, but I think probably like about 3 or 4 years ago, a young woman won a Grammy Award for her design the wigs, and her mom is a minister over at Trinity United Church. Yeah, and I just, senior moments. I know. As well as I know her mom has slipped my mind, but I mean, it's just so many people from Gary who have done and continue to do great things.
Yes. Once you started practicing law, and I know when you came back to Gary, I don't know if I can ask it, what kind of law do you practice?
I have a general practice, and I tell people I do a lot of things. I just don't do everything. Yes. And I try to limit my practice to family law matters, probate, low criminal, not real. Not trying to do any murders or anything. Represent any people who've been accused of murder and that kind of thing, but. A little bit of the criminal law side,
right? And primarily, your office is located in Gary, Indiana.
It is.
It is in Gary. In Midtown Gary, in the heart of Gary. If you're from Gary, can we say the address of your office?
Sure. 26 East 15th Avenue.
26 East 15th Avenue. If you need a good lawyer, you know where to come.
Absolutely.
But what you also, I know your what made you want to join the NAACP, to become involved in
That's interesting because my mom's been a member of NAACP, but we didn't grow up with NAACP,
influence, really?
Yeah, not directly. But when I moved to Fort Wayne, and I joined the church there, and a woman who kind of befriended me at my church was the secretary of the Fort Wayne branch. Wow. And then she invited me to the meeting, and so I joined, and I got active. Wherever I am, I'm going to get active. Yes. I just can't help myself. That's where I was brought up. My mom was active, and my family.
I'm like that.
So so that's how I became involved, and it was really interesting when I moved back to Gary. Yes. I was also working on the state level, but I decided because I had just done so much, I said, I'm going to sit back and not do anything for the first year I'm back at home. Yes. I'm just going to get reacquainted with the area and my family and everything. So after I'd been home about a year, a man came to me and he says, he says, so sign this, he says, because I want you to run for the executive committee for the Gary branch. I'm thinking, I've never even been to a meeting. I don't even know, I don't know anything about it, but I signed it. And so then I was saying to my mother one day, I said, there's an election for NAACP. I think you ought to go vote because I might be on the ballot. And I was. Yes. And like I say, and I wrote.
I would like to share what we have.
Well, this one, in my mom's family, there were 10 children. My dad's family, there were 13. But in my mom's, there were 10 children. And we were always a very close and continue to be a very close family. So we called them the sisters and the brothers.
The sisters and the brothers.
Yeah. And
you could point them out?
Yeah.
Can you hold this up and show?
Okay. Well, that's my Aunt Sarah down here. She was the oldest. She was a businesswoman down in Laurel, Mississippi.
Really?
Yes, and the people, and she would be the only person, that any people miles around would even talked with white people and did business with white people.
Really?
Yes, and the people would call her Miss Sarah Duncan.
Really?
Yeah, they said, and I said, you know Sarah Duncan, Miss Sarah Duncan. Yeah, we know Miss Sarah Duncan.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that's her. She was the oldest, and then this is my Aunt Annie Grace. And she, started out that. Oh, they all started out down south, but she eventually moved up here. That's my Uncle Roscoe.
That name.
He was kind of a ladies' man.
Really?
Uncle Roscoe says he boasts of having 22 children. Okay. He used to own a bar here called Hardaway's Hideaway.
Really? Here?
Yeah.
In Gary?
Oh yeah. I was too young to go there.
Oh wow.
But yeah, my Uncle Roscoe had a bar here. Yeah, and then that's my mom right there.
That's your mom.
And of course, she's a school teacher.
Yes.
And that's my Uncle Goody. He lived in Tennessee, and recently he was a minister. And recently at Tennessee Wesleyan University down in Athens, Tennessee, they named a hall after our family.
Really?
Yes, because I was like, but you have to give big money for them to name a hall after you. And I know my family didn't give big money, but what happened, his daughter was, Gatham, was the first Black woman to go to Tennessee Wesleyan and graduate from there.
Really?
And then followed by her brother and nieces and stuff. So they, because of the contributions that they had made, that they named the hall Hardaway Hall down at Tennessee Wesleyan University.
Wow.
So that was his village. There's my Aunt Flossie, and she was a beautician in Hammond.
Really? In Hammond?
In Hammond. Yeah, she's a beautician in Hammond, right?
Back in the days?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Now, she would only do our hair on very rare occasions because we couldn't afford her.
Yes.
But she was amazing. And then this was the baby of the family, my Aunt Ernestine. And my Aunt Ernestine. And her son is a councilman now.
And his name?
Richard Hardaway.
Richard Hardaway.
Yeah.
Someone whom I know well. Wow. And he's part of your family.
Oh yeah, first cousin. Because his mom and my mom are sisters and brothers.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a small world.
Yeah, it is.
Who would have thought that I would have met you? And I met Richard Hardaway when I first, because I lived in Maryville prior to Gary. And that's where I met Councilman Hardaway. He was absolutely very helpful. He came to the opening of my wedding chapel that I had in Gary. And he's been very supportive. And who would have known that I would have met his first cousin? Small world. Yeah. And you have other pictures that you want to share?
No, I just want to maybe talk about another one of my cousins. I don't have a picture with me, but recently, they named the elementary school in Hammond, the Annie Burns Hicks Elementary School. It used to be Maywood School. I went to Maywood. They changed the name. I'm just saying. But she and my mother were first cousins, and just mom. And so they named the school after her daughter.
Really?
Yes. And her story is that when she graduated from college and wanted to come back to Hammond to become a teacher, they would not hire her because she was Black.
Really?
Yep. And so she fought. You've heard of Richard Gordon Hatcher?
Yes.
Hatcher was her attorney, and they fought, and the Hammond School District had to hire her. And she was the first Black teacher hired in the city of Hammond, for the city school system of Hammond. And so they, like I said, recently named that elementary school that she taught at all of her teaching career after her.
Isn't that something?
And there's also been a documentary that was made by Roland Parrish, who is from Hammond, but he owns a slew of McDonald's in Texas somewhere. Yes. And they've named the hall after him at Purdue University. So again, you gotta get big money. Wow. So, but yeah, the name of that documentary is This Wall Must Come Down.
This Wall Must Come Down.
Yeah, and that's a documentary of her life story.
I've seen that documentary. She is That's her name there, that high school in Hammond.
No, not the high school. It's an elementary school.
An elementary school.
Yeah, Annie Burns Hicks.
Annie Burns Hicks. I'm gonna look it up because I do believe that.
Yeah. So we're so proud of the accomplishments that that our family has achieved. And we're really grounded, with the faith in God.
Yes,
and
absolutely. You have to be.
Love of God, love of family,
yes,
and support, and I think that's what what they have epitomized and they have instilled in us.
Yes, absolutely. Okay.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
Okay, and go back to Richard Hardaway.
Mm-hmm.
His sister was the first Black female police officer in Hammond. Her name is Gloria Mitchell. Yeah, Gloria Mitchell. So
his sister was the first Black police officer in
Hammond. Yep.
Wow.
So
how times have changed. I'm so glad that times have changed.
They've changed. They're changing because it shouldn't be all of these firsts.
Yes.
There are still too many firsts.
Yes.
We shouldn't have all these firsts.
In the year 2000.
In the year 2022.
Yes.
And almost 23.
Absolutely.
And we still have a lot of firsts.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. Mm-hmm. But God is good.
Oh, he absolutely is.
Thank you.
Okay.
Once we were talking about your office being right here in Gary,
mm-hmm.
which to me is important. It's amazing because I think that once you, in my opinion, when you are raised somewhere, you leave your city, you become educated, you have a service to give. Yes, we can all travel, but at some point I feel you have to come back and give back. And your ranks up in the NAACP, which is really important, Tell me a little bit about that journey.
With NAACP, it has afforded me many opportunities that I would never have dreamed of.
Yes.
And I did not know when I started on this journey that some doors would be open. For example, that I have actually met like three sitting presidents, maybe even before now.
Really?
Yeah. It's like, and like I said, and I would never have thought that.
Yes.
Going to the Image Awards.
Really? You went to the Image Awards?
Image Awards. I think about 3 times now. I think I'm going to go back again. So doing something like that.
Yes.
Meeting Vernon Jarrett, who was a journalist out of Chicago.
Uh-huh.
And he started the ACTSO program.
Really?
ACTSO, Afro-Academic Cultural, Technological, Scientific Olympics.
Wow.
It is an amazing program with NAACP for high school students. Mm-hmm. It gives them an opportunity to showcase their talents.
Wow.
It was created by Vernon Jarrett because oftentimes Black children were not allowed to compete in the other award shows or competitions so that they could display their talents.
Yes.
And so he created ACTSO for that purpose.
Wow.
And it would just blow you away to see the talents of these young people.
Wow.
I always often talk about a young man out of, I think it was Syracuse, New York, Syracuse or Buffalo, up in that area. Yeah. But they had a problem with snails, I believe it was. I think snails are really naturally clean water.
Yes.
Snails do. And so what he came up with was to build a model of a water filtration plant that would be filled with snails.
Wow.
And then you would flow that water, the dirty water in. The snails would naturally clean it, and it would come and clean water out on the other side.
Wow. And I never even knew that snails filtrated the water.
Yes. And so I'm thinking, what an amazing thing for that young mind. High school student, again, we're talking high school student, came up with that.
And snails multiply quickly, so you can have...
That's what their problem was, that it was clogging up, their waterway system and things like that, and their, and the pipes and stuff. And he thought, if you have a farm, a snail farm, you could do that and
you control them. Wow.
And just to think, they're not running off any any kind of power.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you're expending, energy to do that. So they come up with, so these our young people are brilliant.
Yes.
Our young people are
I
brilliant.
So.
They just need the opportunity and someone opening a door for them so that they can walk through and showcase what they have.
Yeah.
NAACP will do that for young folks.
Absolutely.
It really will do that for young folks. So.
Absolutely. And I thank you for that. And I'm honored, absolutely honored to be a member of the NAACP. This little black girl from England, who only heard about this on TV, and still didn't really know what it was all about.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a name, but to be a part of that is awesome. And I know that you said you've lived in different places.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like for you being from Gary, living in a big city? Well, Gary is a big city, but somewhere else like up north, etc.
Yeah, and I don't say that Gary's a big city. Certainly, we were larger than we are now as far as population wise. But I always felt that we're right next door to Chicago, and I always thought that Gary was the ideal place to live because you could go into Chicago at any time, as often as you want, and enjoy all of the things that Chicago has to offer, all the culture, all the food, and all the activities and the festivals and things. But you don't have to deal with the crime that they have and the problems that they have and the taxes that they have.
Wow.
And I navigated Chicago well, but I moved out to Philly briefly.
Yeah.
I say brief, I was probably there like 2 months. But when I first got to Philadelphia, I felt like a country bumpkin.
Really?
And I'm thinking, Gary's not that big, but Chicago is, and I moved around Chicago. But for an example, I was using a payphone out in Philly.
Yeah.
I put my quarter in. Yeah, remember payphones?
Payphones, for those who don't know.
Put my quarter in, and you could talk all day here in Gary. I put that quarter in Philly, and they said after 2 minutes, they said, put some more money in. I'm like, what? More money?
And for those of you who might be watching and don't know about payphones, especially our younger ones, back in the days, we didn't have cell phones.
Oh, no.
And a lot of us didn't have home phones.
Unless it was a party line.
So we would have to go to our pay phones and put our little quarter in and make our phone calls. Then it switched to where you can get the card.
Yeah, I remember the card. I do remember the card.
And you can put your money in the card and punch the number in, and then you can talk that many minutes. Hasn't time changed?
Oh my gosh, it has. It has. And like I said, when you talk party line, when you didn't have your own phone, my grandmother had a party line.
Yeah.
And you pick up the phone and somebody was already on it. You had to hang it up. And I'm not talking about in your household. I'm not talking, not in your household. It wasn't another extension. This is a totally different family that's on this line.
A party, I'm telling you, times have really changed.
Yeah. We've seen a lot.
But so now we are in Gary. And we actually what is your vision? What do you see for the future of Gary? Okay. What in your opinion, what do you see for the future of Gary?
I guess my eyes see Gary how it once was, and it can be again. Somebody just has to believe in Gary and invest in Gary.
Yes.
So we have so many natural resources that other communities just don't have.
Yes.
And if we only will believe and work together, people had visions years ago, and because of their visions, things flourished. Our school system. Yes. Our school system was a model for other school systems around this country where people will come. And so it still is unbelievable for me why we don't know how to educate children when we educated children before.
Yeah. And you're a prime example.
In my group, in my generation, in my era, we went to Ivy League schools.
Yes.
Karen Freeman Wilson, she went to Harvard, double Harvard. But this thing, when she came out of Harvard Law School, moved back here to Gary, she couldn't get hired by any white majority law firm.
Wow.
And I looked to the Talberts. I don't know if you met the Talberts.
No.
Shalise and Michael Talbert, they have a law firm now right here in the heart of Gary on 13th and Broadway.
Uh-huh.
And they both worked for majority law firms when they graduated. I mean, they rolled that clock forward like 20-some years, and they were not only hired, but they were there. They learned skills that you don't typically, achieve unless you do some things like that. And then they started their own practice.
Yeah.
And so things have changed. There's a lot of people who are willing to invest themselves in their talents, like the Talberts.
Yes.
They're here, and and others are here.
Like you.
Well, I'm here, but I'm transitioning. I'm transitioning. I try to consider myself a bridge.
Yes.
There are those, certainly my parents, peers, who this technology is just baffling them.
Yeah.
And then we have the people such as yourself who will take a phone and and hit a couple things, and voila, we all of a sudden have more minutes. And I consider myself like a bridge. Yeah. It's like I'm not at your level, but I'm certainly beyond where my parents' peers are, but their friends are. And I try to talk with you to say, be patient with them, don't forget them. Absolutely. Because it's because of them that we are here, and that you are where you are. Absolutely. And that your children will go on beyond that.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. So I thank you. I'm honored, and I'm proud of you. I am so proud of you, with all your achievements, and you're humble. I can see you don't really like to talk about your achievements and the things that you do, but you're humble. And I was proud to meet you. That's why I wanted to talk to you. And a lot of people may not know Barbara Bolling-Williams, and the things that you do, and the shoulders that you stand on with pride. And I thank you for this interview. I hope that I represent the NAACP well, and because I'm standing on your shoulders soon. And I hope that we can get our youngsters to become affiliated with programs like NAACP and other programs that will, because in my opinion, NAACP was formed, and a lot of people died for this organization. And if it dies with us or with you, then what was the purpose? So it has to go. We have to pass that torch.
Yes.
And what I recognize also is that the NAACP is not just a black thing.
Oh no. It's founded with white people. It's not
just a black thing. We have white members.
Absolutely.
Spanish members. Black members, and I saw that. And that touched my soul. Because in my mind, back in the days when I heard NAACP, I always thought it's a black thing. You know what I mean? But to see the culture of the NAACP, that's amazing to me.
Yeah. We were founded by multicultural, multiracial, religion group of people.
Yes.
They came together. And that's what it takes. It takes for us working together. Yeah. We have to work together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So once again, I want to thank you for doing this interview with me.
Thank you for inviting me. I mean, it's like, I don't know about all this, but if you I'll do, you ask me, I'll do, I want to be, of help and assistance to anybody that I can. So
thank you.
And I just love your spirit.
And I love you too. I'm going to hug you.
Thank you. I like them all
so
too. I love them all.
Thank you all. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode of Let's Talk with Sandra. And as always, I hope that you get something positive from our conversation. And thanks you again for your support. Don't forget to comment, subscribe, and as always, peace and love.
That's nice. And then you're going to cut this down to about...
We're in trances. Going off to different places, different planets. Watch your aura pass me by, losing balance. What if we run out of time and second chances? Empty-handed.